Gee, it's like I'm on real TV or radio or something. 30 seconds to air. 15 seconds to air.
Cue the mics.
Cue the mics.
Vote mic. Fade to black. Or fade to black. Roll fade. Actually, roll fade.
Yeah, but I don't hear that. Like basically my
Don't cue you.
right, yeah, that's the thing, because your monitor on TV always goes silent 15 seconds before you go live, so that you know that when you stop hearing the director panicking, that okay, I should probably quit picking my nose and start smiling.
Okay, and if you're actually live.
Did that last comment get caught?
Edit it out in post-production.
Hi everybody, I'm Nick Farr. I am the treasurer. I'm the treasurer of the Hacker Foundation, and I also have an MBA from Grand Valley State University. And I'm here to talk about hacking your finances. Most of what I'm talking about today is actually just plain common sense, with a little bit of special tweaks and insider stuff as far as how to make financial institutions work for you as opposed to the other way around. Also, if you are unclear on what a specific term means, just yell out. Like, what is a revolving credit account? And I'll say, a revolving credit account is a credit account issued as credit cards, store credit, things where you buy and sell, not like a mortgage. Not like a mortgage, which is something that you agree upon that has a fixed thing. Like store credit accounts like from vendors, credit cards. There are a couple other types of revolving credit accounts that I'm forgetting. But if there's a term like that out there, just yell out what is X, and I'll try to hit that for you. Could we have security remove Shardy over here? Just a couple of quick disclaimers. I am not a CPA. I am not an attorney. A speech at a HackerCon is not a substitute for professional advice. And just while we're on the subject, nothing except professional advice is ever a substitute for professional advice. If you can't sue the person for giving you bad advice, then it's not professional advice. Actually, let me take that back. If you can't single-handedly ruin a person's livelihood for giving you bad advice, then it's not professional advice. All right, I promised you in the program that I'd give you the 10 reasons why hackers are bad with their money. Number 1, they don't keep track of their spending. Number 2, they don't have a budget or a financial plan. 3, they don't save or invest wisely. 4, they buy things they don't need and or can't afford. 5, they use bad credit instruments. 6, they keep their credit cards and revolving credit accounts at or near their limits. 7, they don't understand their benefits, compensation, or insurance packages. 8, they charge or demand too little for their services. 9, they don't seek out adequate professional tax and financial planning advice, and in turn end up paying too much in taxes. And 10, they use money as a substitute for personal needs. So, how do you fix this? Well, it actually directly translates. 10 ways for hackers to make better use of their money. 1, keep track of your expenses. 2, make a budget and a financial plan. 3, save money and invest wisely. 4, carefully plan, research, and examine large purchases. 5, make lenders compete for your business. Make them work for you, don't work for them. 6, pay off your credit balances to reasonable levels. 7, know what your benefits package is. Know about your compensation. Know what you're getting paid, what's getting taken out. Know about payroll deductions. And know about the kinds of insurance that are available for you in your state, from your company, from the federal government. 8, get paid what you deserve. 9, seek out adequate professional tax and financial planning advice. And 10, grow up. You'd be surprised how many times I have to say this to professionals in the field. First one, keep track of your spending. There are 2 good open source packages with a long track record out there. They both have their advantages and disadvantages. First one, GNU Cache. GNU Cache is what I use to track my data because the financial institutions that I do business with port their data in ways that GNU Cache is better at handling. But GNU Cash actually has a long project history of being very bad at running the budgeting function. Also, it's a little bit too complicated. It uses debits and credits and expects the user to know what debits, credits, accounts are, things like that. If you don't understand GNU Cash and how it works, don't use it. The other open source alternative that's a major package out there is KMyMoney. KMyMoney, it's more KDE based. It's not good at pulling data from financial institutions. It requires a lot of user intervention, scripting, things like that to process the files that financial institutions push out there. Even if you're good at programming, even if you're good at scripting, even if you're good at doing that, hackers are not good at finances. They're not good at understanding data that financial institutions push out there. If it doesn't come out easily, don't use it because you're going to screw it up. Also, KMyMoney is simple. It's easy. If you can balance a checkbook, you can use KMyMoney. It uses debits and credits in the background, but it doesn't do that. It doesn't do that in user space as much as GNU Cash does it. And also, if you use KDE, you should probably use it. Don't try to use GNU Cash in KDE. Don't try to use KMyMoney in GNOME unless you know what you're doing. If these two options sound unreasonable for you, just do it in a spreadsheet. OpenOffice Calc works just like Excel. It's great if your bank exports direct spreadsheet files, comma-separated values, Excel files. It works with them pretty perfectly unless you're doing more advanced formulas, Visual Basic, that sort of thing. It's more customizable. Generally, you're building your own spreadsheet. There are really good templates out there that you can find off the web. Do research, figure out something that works well for you. The only thing is, if you can't balance your checkbook, you don't know how to write formulas in Excel or OpenOffice, don't use it. Go with one of the other two. But everybody who's attending this con should at least be able to know how to write formulas in a spreadsheet package or know someone who knows how to write formulas in a spreadsheet package. 2, make a budget and a financial plan. They used to actually teach this in high schools. I don't know why they don't do this anymore, and I suspect it's a corporate conspiracy. You'd be surprised how many people don't have a budget. They don't know how much they're supposed to spend on food every month. They don't know how much they're supposed to spend on gas every month. They don't know when they're eating out too much. They don't know when they're spending too much on gas, which is actually a really good way at figuring out if there's something wrong with your car. If your mileage suddenly takes a spike, that means you should probably go take it to a mechanic. If you were keeping track of that in your budget, you'd know that. But most people in this room, or not in this, I'm not going to say anything about people in this room, but most hackers who I've worked with on their finances, okay, I take that back. All hackers who I've worked with in their finances don't have a budget. And if they have a budget, I don't know about it or they're not using it effectively. You really have to use the budget to figure out where your money is going and where you'd rather have your money go instead. If you don't have a budget, pick one of the packages I showed you in the first step, track your expenses, put them into different categories and things like that, and at the end of a month, figure out where your money is going. You will always be shocked. It doesn't matter how methodical a person you are. If you're not using these tools, you really don't know where your money is going. A lot of things that hackers do that they really don't need to do, probably the number one thing that really shocks people is eating out. Eating out more than twice a week means you're spending more money than you need to on food. That's basically it. If you don't know how to cook, find someone who can teach you how to cook. If you don't want to find someone to teach you how to cook, buy those prepackaged meals that are in the frozen food aisle at your local supermarket. If you're going out to eat more than twice a week, and that includes lunch, if you're going out to eat more than twice a week and you don't have to for a legitimate business purpose, i.e. if you can't write off the meal on your taxes, you don't need to be going out to eat for lunch. Second thing, convenience stores. Even hackers with access to a car or easy public transit to a big grocery store are still going to go to a convenience store. I challenge anybody in this room to find any item in a convenience store except for maybe for alcoholic beverages, to find any item in a convenience store that is less than what you can buy it for in a grocery store. The other thing about doing your grocery shopping once a week as opposed to making 3 or 4 trips a week to a convenience store, you save on gas. In the end, you save on time. You're planning ahead, and you're saving money. Another thing, hackers love to use ATM machines. They rarely keep more than $40 in cash on them at any time. They're always going to the ATM, swiping Swiping it in, getting $40 in cash, and paying a $2 transaction fee. That's a lot. If you go to an ATM that's not at your bank or in your network, more than in emergencies, like when you're in Cleveland and your bank just doesn't exist in Ohio and you have to go somewhere else and you need cash and you don't like to carry a lot of cash on you, then you're paying too much. Banks love that. There's a reason that those little tiny ATMs that you plug into a phone line have proliferated is because those are gigantic profit centers for people, for lending institutions. Also, and I try to use this to convince people who aren't convinced of my first point when they figure out that they're spending $20 a month just on ATM fees, is that a lot of those ATMs are very easily hackable. If it's not embedded into a wall in a bank, it's probably very easily hackable by at least 5 or 6 different people who are sitting in this room. Also, another thing, and this I get a little bit of an argument about, a lot of people they grew up buying brand name stuff, and they just continue and they go out there and they buy brand name stuff. For 90% of the stuff out there, the brand name, whatever it is basically the identical thing to the generic. This applies to food. It applies especially to medical products. If there's a generic option available, if there's a store brand, if it's less, buy the generic, buy the store brand. Another thing, know what your limits are. If your credit cards are always maxed out, you don't know how to use credit cards, pay them off, never use a credit card. There's no reason that, even for hotels and renting cars and different things like that, if you're responsible with your money, you don't need to use a credit card. A debit card works exactly the same way. And honestly, you should probably have enough in your savings account to cover whatever that temporary hold is. And if it's really a problem, you can usually call your bank and say, hey, this rental car hold has been on my account, reducing my available balance for 6 months. Can you remove it? Call the bank. If there's ever a question, call the bank. They work for you. If your bank charges you for you to talk to them, go to a different bank. I've banked with a credit union for 12 years, and it's great. There's always a credit union in the United States that I can use that's a local ATM that I don't have to pay fees on. Yeah, I have to go out there and look for a little bit, but honestly, it's never more than $2 in gas. It's never more than a $2 public transit ride away. Another thing, if you're making a pretty decent living, you probably should go out there and find a certified financial planner to help you work out on what your financial goals are. Everybody is different. Everybody has different needs. You should be working with a professional unless you're making less than $20,000 a year. Third thing, save money and invest wisely. The general rule of thumb is to put at least 10% of what you make in your check and just automatically put it into savings or investments. It's usually better to save for large purchases that you don't absolutely need to buy now for some legitimate business reason or some personal emergency. If you plan ahead of time, you don't have to pay whatever interest it is you would if you just threw it on your credit card and paid it off over time. Also, don't be a day trader. Just don't try it. Unless you have over $100,000 in your investment account, attempting to be a day trader, anything you make will either be eaten up in taxes or transaction fees. That's always the way it works. Also, don't invest on your own unless you're getting more than 12% annually. If you're not making that, if you're getting 8% or consistently taking a loss, you don't know how to invest, find a professional who does. That's a pretty basic rule of thumb. Also, whenever you're investing, think long term. Don't buy into companies or investments that you're not 99% sure will be around by the time it's time for you to retire. It's always better to invest in long term unless you have money that you just like to play with. Researching and planning your big purchases. Hackers like to buy expensive cars, boats, equipment, big ticket items. The only things you absolutely need are food, clothing, and shelter. Everything else is negotiable. You don't need to replace your gaming system or laptop every 6 months. You don't. There's no legitimate reason to be spending more than $4,000 on computer equipment in a given year. Also, by figuring out what you need to buy, by figuring out what a big purchase will cost,